what if all those ancient stories about gods and angels and miracles, what if they were really about something else entirely?
Oh, wow.
Like, what if our ancestors were actually trying to describe like advanced technology and extraterrestrial encounters, but they just, they didn't have the language for it back then.
Right.
So they used the words and concepts that they had.
Yeah.
Welcome, viewers, to the Quantum Soul channel. Today, we're diving deep
That's fascinating.
into ancient texts.
Yeah.
To explore the possibility that they hold clues to a past way more technologically advanced than we ever imagined.
Yeah, it's a fascinating idea. And when you look at the common threads that are woven through these narratives across cultures, it really does make you think. We see these stories of anomalous conceptions and divine interventions appearing everywhere, from biblical figures like Jesus, John the Baptist, and Moses, all the way to Eastern stories of LSU, the Yellow Emperor, and Buddha.
Yeah, it's like these cultures were separated by time and geography, but they were all struggling to make sense of the same kinds of experiences, trying to put into words something that defied their understanding.
Yeah, and maybe one of the most well-known examples of this is the Annunciation. We often interpret it through like a religious lens, but if we kind of strip away that layer and we look at the core elements of the story, right? A seemingly impossible pregnancy announced by a being of light. It starts to sound a lot like modern day concepts like artificial insemination or in vitro fertilization.
So you're saying that it's like they were seeing this advanced technology, but they didn't have the framework to understand it.
Yeah.
So they interpret it as divine intervention.
Exactly. And, this idea of reinterpreting these ancient events through the lens of modern science is really key to understanding this theory called paleocontact. And that suggests that what we see as supernatural events in ancient texts might actually be records of our ancestors encountering advanced civilizations.
Okay, so are we talking about ancient aliens here?
Possibly.
Now that is a deep dive. But before we get too far down that rabbit hole, let's talk about another biblical story that's generated a lot of debate. The Star of Bethlehem. Could that celestial beacon that led the Magi to Jesus have been something a little closer to home?
Well, the idea that the Star of Bethlehem might have been something other than an astronomical phenomenon has been around for a while. Some researchers suggest that it could have been an intelligently directed craft, perhaps even a UFO.
Wait, are you saying that the Magi might have seen a spaceship?
Yeah!
I mean, that's a pretty wild thought. But I guess it does make you look at the Christmas story in a whole new way. And speaking of things that sound like science fiction, let's talk about those stories of Ascension, Jesus ascending to heaven, and Elijah being taken up in a fiery chariot.
Yeah, those stories definitely do sound like early accounts of space travel, don't they? Especially when you think about like the description of Elijah's chariot, of fire, whirlwinds, and, a direct ascent into the sky. It's almost as if someone was trying to describe a rocket launch or even like traveling through a wormhole.
Right. And what about the third heaven that the Apostle Paul described? Could that be an ancient way of talking about another dimension or even outer space?
It's an intriguing possibility, and it ties in nicely with the whole idea of paleocontact. It suggests that these figures might have had experiences that, we're only just now beginning to understand with our modern scientific framework.
Okay, so we've got impossible pregnancies, UFOs disguised as stars, and ancient prophets blasting off into space. I'm starting to see why this channel is called the Quantum Soul. But there's one more mind-blowing image from the Bible that we really need to talk about. The New Jerusalem, as described in the book of Revelation.
Yes, the New Jerusalem. This vision of a giant cube descending from the heavens filled with advanced technology and life support systems has fascinated theologians and sci-fi fans alike for centuries.
I mean, it really does sound like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie. But what could this image actually represent? I mean, could it be a blueprint for like a space habitat, a breakaway civilization escaping a dying Earth, or maybe even just a metaphor for spiritual transcendence?
Well, the interpretation of the New Jerusalem is a complex one, and there are a lot of different viewpoints on it. Some people see it as a literal description of a future city, while others view it as a symbolic representation of like a higher state of consciousness or maybe spiritual enlightenment.
So it's like a choose your own adventure kind of prophecy.
Kind of.
But what's interesting to me is that it seems to tap into some very modern anxieties. Like climate change, overpopulation, the search for habitable planets. It's almost like our ancient ancestors were wrestling with the same existential questions that we are facing today.
And that's what makes these ancient texts so relevant, even after thousands of years. They speak to something really deep within the human psyche, our fascination with the unknown, our search for meaning, our need to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
Speaking of ancient texts that seem to defy easy explanation, we've got to talk about Ezekiel's vision of the Ruach HaKodesh. HaKodesh, a flying craft described in such detail that it sounds like a blueprint for a modern spaceship.
Yeah, the Ruach HaKodesh is a truly fascinating account. Ezekiel describes this flying machine in really intricate detail, wheels within wheels, fire, a whirlwind of motion. The level of technical specificity is so precise that even NASA holds a patent on a wheel design that's based on Ezekiel's descriptions.
Wait, NASA took inspiration from the Bible for a real-world invention? That's amazing. It makes you wonder if Ezekiel was actually seeing some kind of advanced technology that was just way beyond the comprehension of everyone around him at the time.
It's certainly a possibility, and it lends credence to the idea that these ancient texts might contain more than just mythology and religious teachings. Maybe they hold glimpses of a past that we are only beginning to rediscover.
This is mind-blowing stuff. If you're enjoying this deep dive into ancient texts and modern parallels, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and share this video with your friends. We'll be right back with more mind-blowing insights.
It's like we're peering through a window into the past, but the glass is all distorted, and we're only catching these little glimpses of something incredible.
Right.
It really makes you wonder, what other secrets might be hidden in these ancient stories.
Yeah. And, earlier we were talking about those anomalous conceptions, figures like Jesus and LSU and Buddha. And it almost seems like there's this theme of divine intervention in the creation of these pivotal figures throughout history and across cultures.
It is an interesting pattern, isn't it? Imagine for a second that you're living back then, a time before we had modern science. No understanding of genetics or reproductive biology. And all of a sudden you start hearing these stories of women conceiving without earthly fathers, often accompanied by these strange lights in the sky, or visitations from otherworldly beings. Wouldn't you be inclined to think that was a divine act?
Yeah, it makes sense when you put it that way. It's like if you tried to explain a smartphone to someone living in biblical times,
right,
they'd probably see it as some kind of magical object or a tool of the gods, because they just wouldn't have the context to understand the technology behind it.
Exactly. And that's really where the idea of paleocontact comes into play. What if these ancient stories about gods and miracles weren't just, attempts to explain the unexplainable? What if they were actual accounts of encounters with advanced beings who had technology that was just way beyond what the people of that time could comprehend?
So you're saying that these ancient texts might be giving us a peek into a time when humans were interacting with beings who had technology that was far beyond our own. That's a really wild thought. But it also brings up a lot of questions, like what about all the skeptics who say that these are just myths and legends? How do we square the idea of ancient astronauts with what we know about human history and evolution from science?
Well, that's a great question. And, skepticism is always a healthy approach when we're dealing with these kinds of really big claims.
Yeah.
But we also have to keep in mind that the fact that we haven't found proof of something doesn't mean that it never happened.
Right.
Just because we haven't found definitive proof of ancient alien contact doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
So are you saying that we should keep an open mind and consider the possibility that these ancient texts might actually be telling us something really important about our past?
Absolutely. The thing that I really love about exploring these kinds of ideas is that it forces us to really question the things we think we know, to think outside the box and consider alternative ways of looking at history and science and even the nature of reality itself.
Yeah. It's like we're trying to put together this giant puzzle, but a bunch of the pieces are missing, and the ones we do have are from a different time and place.
Right.
We might never get the full picture.
Yeah.
But the process of exploring and trying to figure it out is what makes it so fascinating. And, it's not just about the past, it's about understanding where we fit in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And what we might become in the future.
Yeah, exactly. The study of ancient texts and the possibility of paleocontact can be a real catalyst for expanding our consciousness, challenging the things we believe in, and inspiring us to imagine all sorts of new possibilities for the future. It reminds us that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves and that the universe is just full of mysteries that are waiting for us to uncover them.
One of the things that always amazes me about these ancient accounts is how much detail they have and how consistent they are.
Yeah.
Like we talked about Ezekiel's vision of the Ruach HaKodesh, the way he describes this flying craft with wheels within wheels and fire and this whirlwind. It's so vivid and specific that it's hard to just dismiss it as pure imagination.
And the fact that NASA has actually been inspired by Ezekiel's descriptions and used them for a real invention, that's really something to think about.
Yeah.
It suggests that he might have been witnessing something truly extraordinary, something that couldn't be explained using the language and technology that they had back then.
It's almost like he was trying to describe something that he just couldn't fully grasp using the only words and concepts he knew.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder how many other ancient texts might have similar clues about advanced technology or alien encounters stars buried within them, just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, that's what's so exciting about this whole field of study. It's always changing as we uncover new information and find new ways to interpret these ancient texts.
Right.
And who knows what incredible discoveries are still out there waiting for us as we keep digging into these mysteries.
Speaking of mysteries, let's go back to the book of Revelation for a minute and that enigmatic description of the New Jerusalem. It's such a powerful image, this giant, technologically advanced city coming down from the sky. It seems to tap into our deepest fears and our biggest hopes all at the same time.
Yeah, the New Jerusalem is a really multifaceted symbol open to lots of different interpretations.
Right.
Some see it as a literal description of a city of the future, maybe a space habitat or a sanctuary from a dying Earth.
Right.
Others see it as a metaphor for spiritual transcendence, a state of enlightenment or higher consciousness.
It's incredible how these ancient texts can still have such deep meaning for us even after thousands of years. It's like they're speaking to something that's timeless and universal about the human experience.
Yeah.
Our desire to connect with each other and find meaning in our lives. Our yearning for something that's beyond the ordinary.
And it's that yearning, that desire to explore the unknown and push the boundaries of what we know that's driven human progress throughout history. That's what led us to explore the oceans, to conquer the skies, and to reach for the stars. And maybe that's what will ultimately lead us to unravel the truth behind these ancient mysteries.
This has been such an amazing conversation, and it really makes you wonder what other secrets are hidden in these ancient texts, just waiting to be understood.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away, I want to remind our viewers that if you're enjoying this deep dive, make sure you hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and share this video with your friends to continue exploring the quantum soul. It's amazing to think about how much we don't know about our own history.
Yeah.
We like to think of ourselves as the most advanced civilization that's ever existed, but what if we're wrong?
It's definitely a humbling thought to consider that there might have been civilizations that were far more advanced than us living way back in our distant past.
Right. It challenges our whole idea of how progress works and opens up the possibility that maybe knowledge has been lost and rediscovered over and over again throughout history.
Okay.
Like, what if the Library of Alexandria actually had knowledge that we're only just now starting to understand again? Or what if ancient cultures had technologies that we haven't even imagined yet?
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder what other secrets might be hidden in plain sight, just waiting for us to figure them out. Maybe the answers are encoded in ancient myths and symbols, or buried deep underground, waiting for archaeologists to find them.
It feels like we're on the edge of some vast, unexplored territory.
Yeah.
And these ancient texts are like maps leading us to hidden treasures of knowledge and wisdom.
And it's not just about the destination, it's about the journey of discovery itself.
Right.
The process of exploring these ideas, of questioning our assumptions and broadening our perspectives, that's what truly enriches our understanding of ourselves and the universe around us.
One thing that's really stood out to me during this deep dive is how it connects all these different areas of knowledge.
Yeah.
Science, history, spirituality, even philosophy. It's like we're starting to see a much bigger picture, emerging one that brings all these different disciplines together into a more complete worldview.
I agree. It's becoming more and more clear that we can't really understand the past or the present or the future without acknowledging how interconnected everything is. The study of ancient texts and the possibility of paleocontact, it forces us to break down the walls we've built between science and spirituality, history and mythology, and embrace a more integrated understanding of reality.
It's like we're finally starting to grasp this concept of the quantum soul.
Yeah.
That we're not just physical beings, but also energetic beings connected to something much greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
And that this connection might have been understood, even cultivated by ancient civilizations in ways that we're just beginning to rediscover.
That's exactly right. And as we go deeper into these ancient mysteries, we might find that they hold the keys to unlocking our own hidden potential, to expanding our consciousness, and to reaching a deeper understanding of our place in the cosmos.
This has been an absolutely incredible journey of exploration.
Yeah.
And I think we can all agree that we've only scratched the surface of what's out there to discover.
Absolutely.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to encourage all of you watching to keep exploring these ideas on your own. Read those ancient texts, research the theories, and keep an open mind.
And don't be afraid to question the way things are.
Yeah.
To challenge the stories we've been told and seek out new perspectives. The truth is out there waiting to be found.
And who knows, maybe you'll discover something that completely changes the way you see the world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ancient texts as modern parallels. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, like, and share this video with your friends. And don't forget to check out the 2 videos on your screen to continue your journey into the quantum soul.